Friday. We're just lounging around with a beverage. Hope everyone's doing well. Friday. James was doing here with Andrew Fantasia.
Hello, hello. I'm just grooving. This is my Friday dance.
Yeah, it's Andrew Fantasia with I was like, we need some nice music to get us in. Like, it's like you're at like a resort, but not at the good part of the resort. Anyway, let's get that. That's Andrew. It's Friday. We're going casual today, Andrew. It's Casual Friday.
Oh, I don't need the shirt then.
You don't need a shirt. I hope you're not even wearing pants, because if you're wearing pants, first of all, you've been doing the pandemic all wrong. If you're wearing, I haven't worn pants for 2 years already.
If I learned anything from this pandemic, it's that apparently I'm the weird one because I'm the only person in the world who walks around fully clothed in my own home. Apparently that makes me the odd one out. I don't know.
Have you been wearing like nice clothes though, or do you wear like I'm trying to say like jogging pants and like long johns and stuff?
See, I don't own sweatpants or jogging pants. I literally just have dress pants and jeans. And that's it. Okay. Some of the dress pants, there's like a hierarchy though. Like some dress pants are like way too big for me, so I look like Krusty the Clown when I'm wearing them. And then some are like what I would actually wear out to an event. So there's a tier, but it's just there's nothing sweatpant related in my wardrobe.
Okay, well, we got to make that change, but let's get on with the show. It is Friday, it's casual, so the way this show, I have not done this show in 4 freaking years, Andrew. It's been 4 years since we've done it, but here we are having a great time. The way it works is we just pick a bunch of topics and we're going to talk about them. If you want us to talk about your topic on a Casual Friday show going forward, email us at digitalcharcuterie@gmail.com. That's digitalcharcuterie@gmail.com. You can find that in the description of this video, and you just email it and we'll do it. That's how we used to do it, but we haven't done it for 4 years, so we don't have any emails coming in anymore because people thought that I was dead. I'm not yet. I'm still here. Let's go. We're going to talk a little bit about this song just dropped today, Andrew. A song by Michael Giacchino just came up. We got Mr. Rez in the chat saying charcuterie, spelling it very phonetically. We're going to talk about music by Michael Giacchino, though. The Catwoman score track, I guess you could call it, from the Batman soundtrack just hit today, this morning, like midnight, sometime around there. This is the third one. First, we got the Batman. Then we got the Riddler. Now we got the Catwoman score. We're not going to play it because YouTube will block us, and all 67 cents that we're going to make from this video. We need that to survive. But Andrew, I sent you this track. You listened to it. What were your thoughts on the Catwoman score?
This might be my favorite of the 3 scores, James. I like this. I like that they used violin. Violin kind of goes hand in hand with Catwoman. There's just something about the way a violin sounds, something about the way strings sound that complement the movement of a cat. If you look at old cartoons or like old Batman stuff and listen to the music that plays when there are Catwomen or just cats on screen, you hear a lot of strings, and there's a reason for that. Michael Giacchino knows what he's doing, and this has that right sound. There's also some really cool kind of like melancholic piano going on there. It sounds kind of like the mood that this song put me in is like I'm standing in an after-hours jazz club and something dangerous is about to happen.
Yeah.
It's just the perfect sort of way to spell out this character musically. And yeah, it's my favorite of the 3. The Batman one is a very close second, though.
I sent you, after I heard this the first time, I sent it to you and I said, this is very like haunting. And I said haunting, and I felt, there was something about it. It just felt tragic almost. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how telling is this for this character? Is this character going to be haunted and tragic? Because I think from what we can gather from what we've seen, without getting into any spoilers, because we don't have any anyway, the two of us have not been lucky enough to have been invited by Warner Brothers to go see it, which I don't understand. But we've been covering everything Warner Brothers for the last 27 years, and they still won't invite us. But everything we know about this character is she loses her mother. She is raised by Falcone. She's like Falcone's like adopted daughter. I don't know if that's technically is, or if it's just that's the way they kind of have their connection with each other. So her, her upbringing has been probably tragic. Her mother was, let's be honest, probably killed by Falcone's men. Like that's probably the reality of it all right there. So this score, really brought something out. I know you said the Batman was your number 2, but the Riddler score, I want to talk about that just a little tiny bit, because that one, the Batman one's great. They released that first for a reason, and that's very, it's very Batman-y, especially the ending, the last little. If you haven't listened to that track, you got to go check it out. It's on that track. The Batman's theme is on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify, whereas the Riddler and Catwoman are only on Spotify and YouTube, I believe. So you want to check that out. But the Riddler one, take it. The Apple, the Riddler one though, intrigues me a lot because of the use of Ave Maria, and the one scene that we've seen is the funeral scene, and Ave Maria is, aside from Christmas time, it's used a lot at funerals. So it it brings on the death of the Riddler, and you're a huge Riddler fan as well. Nobody likes the Riddler as much as you do, and they seem, we're getting away from the score a little bit, but it seems, Andrew, that we're getting the Riddler that you've been dying for in this movie.
Hell yes. The score for his, I have to listen to it again because it's the one that just stuck with me the least. I was like playing Assassin's Creed or something when you sent me the Riddler score. So I was listening to it, and then I just kind of was like, oh, that's nice. And then I carried on assassinating people in medieval Europe. So I was not like focused on it as much as I would want to be. But I remember it being spooky, all the right kinds of spooky. And I remember it having some really good bombast in the middle, but for the most part, it was very quiet and unnerving, which is kind of Riddler style. So again, it makes sense. All of the Giacchino stuff, all of his scores all make sense. I want to say hello to Rez and Jennifer in the chat, and Jennifer is saying Riddler is the best. Thank you, Jennifer, because that is exactly right. That is the right answer.
Whatever.
Yeah, he is the best.
I love the Riddler. I do love the Riddler. My favorite villain is the Penguin. I don't know why. I think it's just I put my old 1980s toy away, but there's just something with the Penguin I always liked. With I have this weird obsession with top hats, and the Penguin and top hats kind of gets me. And I kind of wish Colin Farrell would wear one, but whatever. That's I love the Riddler theme though. The Riddler theme, the Ave Maria, it's very haunting. There's something about it. We're only a few weeks away from this movie, but the Catwoman score just dropped today. It is, I think it's haunting and tragic, and I think it's worth checking out. Like you said, it might be the best of the 3. It feels almost like it's the most complete of the 3. The Batman one, as much as I like it, it feels like it's part of something bigger in a lot of, not that, I mean, it should, but it feels like it's something bigger, like it's part of this bigger orchestral score that's going on that we're going to get. The Riddler one is Ave Maria, like I said, and this one is just, I kind of feel like I get to know the character. And now, look, when I see the movie, maybe that's not the case whatsoever, but when I hear that theme, I definitely feel like I know who Selena Kyle is underneath the cowl. She's got 9 lives, Andrew. She points that out in the trailer. So
she does.
There you go.
I had a question because I was, you and I both grew up watching the Adam West stuff, right? So we both kind of were there for all this different iterations of Batman as he has grown and changed. And I can't figure out, and maybe because you're smarter and older, at what point did
mostly older
at what point in time did Catwoman stop being a villain? Because now she's just kind of like, every time she pops up, she's just like a thief who ends up marrying him.
I gotta say, I could be completely off because I don't know. I haven't read too many Catwoman. Me mostly just in Batman, but I think she was always kind of on the fence. I think she was always a villain, but she was never like the Joker, just all the way villain. I think she was someone who kind of towed the line. She was the mirror of Batman, whereas Batman's on this side of the mirror, she was on this side of the mirror. That's what I kind of think. Because even when you watch the old Adam West shows, she was evil, but she had that soft spot for Adam West. And who didn't? But I think it was late 90s. around the late 90s after Michelle Pfeiffer. I think that's when they kind of decided, it might have even been, or the animated series might have towed the line a little bit, where she wasn't completely bad, and then they kind of made her an anti-villain, which is it's funny because it's almost exactly like what they're doing with Harley Quinn. Like Harley Quinn, like you play like Injustice, it's like Harley Quinn's just like a hero, and you're like, oh, okay, so she's just a good guy now, yeah. And then you see the arguments, well, that's how she is. It's just the Joker's what makes her bad. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. That's how it works. Good, but like they've done the same type of thing, and I think it works with both of them, to be honest. And the problem is we all love the villains, but we all watch the stories for the heroes. And so if you wanted to make a character like Catwoman or Harley Quinn more accessible, you got to make them heroic, even though they're not good. Like Harley Quinn and Catwoman, they're both thieves, right? But they're villains. But there's always the chance that they'll be on the right side of things. And if you play the Arkham Asylum games, Catwoman's not a good guy, but she's not necessarily a pure villain. Kind of like Mr. Freeze is the same way.
Yeah. I mean, Catwoman is always going to look out for herself first. But I feel like if you put me in a room with Harley, there's a really good chance she'll break my kneecaps with something. Whereas if you put me in a room with Catwoman, she'll probably just be like later and she'll take off without hurting me. So like there is like lines that they won't let Catwoman cross anymore. And it's weird because I feel like, Eartha Kitt would have, she'd flirt with Adam West, but she was still more than willing to tie him to a bomb. So I'm just so curious where that line was first drawn and why.
I think why it was to make a profit. And honestly, I don't know. Somebody's going to comment and tell us how it is, but I'm guessing it had something to do with the Catwoman movie with Halle Berry, where they had to justify, doing something around there. And I think it was around that time. And I don't know. I think this movie is going to make her bad. I think she's going to be more evil than good in this movie. And I think I think she's going to be towing the line the whole movie. And towards the end, when you think, okay, well, the Falcone influence, she's realizing the Falcone influence. And then at the end, she's going to say, no. There's the Falcone influence, but I am who I am, and I am not a good person. And then that's the moment when Selena Kyle becomes Catwoman. That's what I'm going with. I could be completely off. Like I said, Warner Bros. Wasn't kind enough to invite us to a pre-screening, so they're dead to us.
Thanks, brothers.
All right, let's move on to our first official topic of the day. This is something that's near and dear to your heart. This is She-Hulk news. I know you're really looking forward to She-Hulk.
Yeah.
But the news, the rumor going around right now is that Howard the Duck, everyone's favorite duck that's not Donald or Daffy or Ace or Deadeye or any of those ducks or Duckula, any of those. It's Howard the Duck. Apparently, Andrew will be appearing in the She-Hulk show, but word is that it's more than a cameo, that Howard the Duck will essentially be a character in the She-Hulk show. As a fan, someone who's looking forward to She-Hulk, and someone who knows something about Howard the Duck, I'm guessing, what do you make of any of this?
Okay, first of all, I really appreciate the effort you put into making it look like Tatiana is holding Howard the Duck.
Exactly. She's holding his head up. Just like,
she's not only holding him, but from the look on her face, she's kind of proud of the fact that she's holding him.
And he's just like, what are you holding me for? Which is how I feel like this is how a duck would react in this situation.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I've been vocal before. This is the show I was the most excited for out of the whole Marvel show slate. Because She-Hulk is just cool. I don't love this new logo at all, but whatever.
Yeah, that's why I put it on this poster, because I know you don't like it. So I did this out of pure spite towards you. I do prefer the old one. I do prefer the old one as well. This one looks like very bland, like NBC, like Thursday night at 10 p.m.
Exactly.
That's what this one looks like. The other one looked like a Marvel show. I'm with you on that.
This looks like it's still being made by Ike Perlmutter in the Netflix days. Yeah, Howard. Okay. Howard showing up would be really, really fun, especially if she has to defend him on trial, because from the little I know about Howard, he's not a very easy guy to defend. He's into all sorts of salacious things. So seeing that, and if that's like a partnership where it's like this giant green lady and this little duck man walking around, fending off Kingpin or whoever the hell is going to be in the show, Abomination. I don't know. I think that makes it even more fun than it was already promising to be. Does this mean, I don't know, like obviously, you know, this is a totally different animal than the Howard the Duck 1986 movie, but if Leah Thompson wants to show up at some point in this film, James, I will not say no.
The multiverse is out there, Andrew. Anything is possible at this point in time. Clearly, this is a different Howard the Duck. I hope Seth Green comes back to do the voice. I don't see why Marvel wouldn't do that. I don't see why he wouldn't do that either. Like, he was in there. I don't know much. I've seen the Howard the Duck movie a bunch of times, and my knowledge of She-Hulk is I'm excited for the She-Hulk show. I've said this several times. I love the Hulk though. My knowledge of She-Hulk is just that, you know, she's like the Hulk, and so I'm very excited about that. Looking forward to it. But I don't understand how this interaction would work at all. Like my limited knowledge is telling me two things. Why am I excited for it aside from the fact that it's a talking duck? And how does it make sense? Like I can't wrap my head around it. I know that Bruce Banner is going to show up, which makes sense to me. But Howard the Duck, here's a question, Andrew, because you're a big Marvel guy. You have your Infinity Rewatch podcast going on where you rewatch all the Marvel every Marvel thing now. But do you think that lately Marvel might be catering to the fans a little bit too much? Do you think that that's a concern? I guess that hasn't crossed your mind, judging from the face you just made. But do you think that there's a chance that Marvel might cater to the fans a little bit more than they need to?
I don't know if this counts as catering to the fans too much, but the first thing that sort of was a red flag for me of like phase 4 was this whole thing of Patrick Stewart being in Doctor Strange. Like, I love the fact that Patrick Stewart is back as Professor X. I think that's really, really neat. But it has me a little bit worried because as cool as it is to see him and as cool as it was to see what we saw in Spider-Man No Way Home, when it comes to like the X-Men, I would much rather have all new versions of those characters. I'd much rather have the MCU version of Wolverine, the MCU version of Rogue, particularly Rogue, because she was kind of boring in the other movies. I want to see them kind of develop and improve on what we got before. So I'm worried that the whole multiverse of it all it might go too far where X-Men is concerned, and we might just get all the old actors back, and I don't really want that. I'm sorry, I don't really want that. I want a new Wolverine, just make it mostly new, 90%.
I know. I don't think Patrick Stewart's in it for the long haul.
I hope you're right.
I think we're getting an MCU Professor X. And I said this on our show on Tuesday, on Super Tuesday. We talked about Doctor Strange 2 a little bit there, where Patrick Stewart turned down Kevin Feige for returning as Professor X because of his ending in Logan. And he said if Logan didn't happen, maybe he would think differently. But because of it, he didn't want to do it. And now he's back. And that tells me he's only back he's back for a purpose. And I think it's a one film purpose. And Scotty Haku is on the show. He theorized that maybe the Illuminati Wanda kills them all. So all those members, all of your, the Black Bolt from the show is going to be one of the members apparently. Professor X is in there. Let's just go with Krasinski as Reed Richards and whoever else. Maybe they all go the other way. Because speaking of we're totally off topic with She-Hulk, but the fan theory of Reed Richards, if they don't get Krasinski in there as Reed Richards, is there going to be a huge fan uproar? Hey, Vermont Mike.
Hey, Vermont Mike. Howdy. If they don't get Reed Richards, if they cast John Krasinski and it's not Reed Richards, then yeah, I feel like some people might uproar. I don't really care who plays Reed myself, but I'm
with you on that one too.
Yeah, if they show Reed and it's somebody else, cool. But if John Krasinski is playing, Ralph Boner III, they gotta know that that's gonna come with some backlash, right? And I don't think they're gonna do that. I think they're gonna pick one lane or the other. But that's the only thing that has me worried. In the world, I mean, with She-Hulk, particularly, like, let's use the old logo as an example, because that's a perfect example. The old logo of She-Hulk represents what I love so much about the MCU, is that it's taking the world of Marvel Comics and celebrating the cheesy, colorful comic bookiness of it all, which, good or bad, early 2000s superhero movies did not really do all that often. Maybe the Raimi Spider-Man, but that's a whole other story. So when we get the MCU version of the X-Men, what I'd like to see, as a guy who loved that X-Men cartoon, is the cheesy, colorful Marvel Comics versions of the X-Men. I want Wolverine to have black and things coming off his head and the yellow spandex. I want Rogue to be super Southern and wear green and yellow. And I feel like if we get Jackman and Paquin, they're not going to do that. They're just going to be like, hey, it's me again. Hello. And I'd rather just get the fun, colorful, celebratory Marvel versions of those characters, because we have not seen that yet. We've seen amazing Professor X's and Magnetos and all that, but we haven't seen those versions yet, and I'd love to see them. And Vermont Mike wants to get a Gambit. I'm all there for you, Vermont Mike. And unlike the costume director who worked on X-Men Origins Wolverine, I think that the MCU people will take the extra bit of effort to actually make Gambit's coat brown instead of black. So, like, it's those little things that'll make the difference.
I think the Gambit. Okay, first there was no. It always made me laugh that Gambit was in that X-Men, the Wolverine movie, because it probably around 20 years ago now, they asked, why isn't Gambit in the X-Men movies? And one of the producers said, I think it was Laura Schuler Donner, said, Gambit's too similar to Wolverine. They didn't want to have those two characters in there because they're too similar. And whether you agree or not, Andrew, that was the quote, okay? And you can Google it. I'm sure you can Google it.
I talked to Laura this morning. She told me the same thing.
And then, well, I'm just saying Google it because I know that I'm not making that, because I remember reading that. And then he appeared in that movie like 5 years later. And I was like, what is going on here? You're saying that they're too similar to be in an X-Men movie, but now we're in a Wolverine movie and you're throwing them in there. Fine. And then there was supposed to be that Channing Tatum Gambit movie where he was attached. He was like the Tom Cruise of Iron Man. He was attached to Gambit for years. And word just came out, I think earlier this week or last week, they said that movie was supposed to take place like in like an isolated desert area, and it was like good. They referred to it as the Goodfellas of superhero movies or something like that, where they were like a bunch of mutants who kind of lived their own lives and didn't want to help people and were just like gangsters, essentially. I think Gambit's coming. I think they're going to wait a little bit on Wolverine, Andrew, and I think Gambit's coming up sooner than later, because we saw Gambit once, but it wasn't Gambit. It was kind of Gambit, but not really. Wolverine we got for 20 years. We have 20 years of Wolverine, and with the exception of 2 movies, maybe 1.5 movies, we've got some pretty good Wolverine, like in 20 years, right? Like, I mean, you take away the first X-Men Origins, even X-Men 3 I'll take, like we've gotten some pretty good Wolverine in 20 years that I think they won't, but I think they need to slow down on the Wolverine a little bit. Back to She-Hulk, though. What are your expectations for the show, and can you shed some light on what you think the plot or the purpose of the show will be? Because we know with Marvel, it's not just She-Hulk. It's She-Hulk, but She-Hulk's going to bring you into. It's going to connect to something. So, Andrew, hit me with your knowledge.
Oh boy, I don't have a whole lot of that knowledge.
On
so
the
it's going to be a very weak hit.
We've talked about this for like an hour now. You knew we were talking about this. You should have prepared for.
I think that She-Hulk is going to deal with a bit of the fallout, not much, but a bit of the fallout of Spider-Man and Hawkeye, because these are 2 big events that happen in New York City, and she's a lawyer, so she is dealing with big events happening in New York City. So I feel like the show is going to, however she ends up getting the powers, if they're going to keep it the same or change it, blood transfusion, whatever happens. I think that being She-Hulk, it's going to be kind of like a me, myself, and Irene situation. That's what I feel we're going to have here. I feel like Jennifer Walters is going to be kind of shy, kind of reserved, kind of a doormat, and that's sort of the opposite of what lawyers tend to be. So I feel like that's really going to hinder her career. And then the second She-Hulk comes into town, it's going to be that yin yang thing of like, well, I'm so shy when I'm me, but when I'm She-Hulk, I'm like fabulous and everybody loves me. And so I'm going to use that charisma to get ahead in my career. And she's going to become this superstar lawyer. And maybe it gets to her head. Maybe she gets to that point where, you know, she's like, oh, I don't need your advice anymore, Bruce. I'm the best lawyer in town now. But then she's going to need to reel it in and, you know, find her humility and deal with some kind of big threat, some kind of big case, whether it has to do with Fisk, whether it has to do with, I don't know, some other villain. I don't know who's operating in New York City right now. Marvel's kind of short on villains. So it could be anybody. I hope they introduce somebody new, but I hope Fisk is also there because Big Willie is the big guy. And then Howard is just there as like a little bonus treat. Maybe he's one of the cases that she worked on her way up, and now he's her pal because she didn't really have many friends beforehand. So I see it as kind of like a buddy cop movie, but instead of buddy cops, it's buddy lawyer.
What if it's like Boston Legal?
Oh, then I hope everybody's got a Boston accent, and she's like, "Hey, I'm She-Hulk."
But like Howard the Duck is like the Shatner to her Spader, but she's also like a She-Hulk. I'm in. Let's do it. I'm looking forward to this. I got to be honest with you. I didn't really care about Moon Knight too much. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, and now I'm like, I'm growing to it. I'm not over the moon excited for Moon Knight necessarily, but I am intrigued by it more and more. And I think your explanation of the accent really kind of the Super Bowl spot that was like 30 seconds or a minute, whatever it was. I think that kind of put your theory of his voice forward. And I think that's where they're going with it. All right, let's move on. What are we moving on to, Andrew? You want to move on to Turtle Power? This is the new logo for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie that's coming out in 2023. Executive produced by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who of course did Pineapple Express. And when you think of that movie, you think of Superbad and you think of Ninja Turtles as well. But the big news of the day, aside from this being released a week earlier than projected. They were like, no, you know what? We've got something here. It's going to be a week earlier in August, which I like. August works for Ninja Turtles. It worked for the Michael Bay first movie. They went with June for the sequel. It didn't work out so well, even though you and I are huge fans of that movie. But they went for it here. Mr. Reds is saying this is bitching. I totally agree.
Yeah, that's a nice logo.
I told you, it's like, don't get excited, but it is, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's not like in your face. It's very perfectly subtle. It's exactly what you want it to be. It's reminiscent of the old red one from the 80s comic run, which I have those here. Anyway, somewhere. But the big news, Andrew, aside from this, is that Paramount Plus is like, and then you're going to get movies specifically based on Ninja Turtle villains on Paramount Plus to follow. So it's kind of like they're doing like some weird shared universe, but it's the villain shared universe because they're heroes in a half shell. We already got them. So you hear that news, Fantasia. What excites you? What maybe makes you hesitant? And what villains are you hoping to see on the Ninja Turtle Paramount Plus movies? Don't forget, each movie is a villain.
Yeah. This is a weird story because there's this Seth Rogen movie, and there's a second movie, and I keep hearing one is live action and one is animated, and I don't know which is which.
So the Colin Jost one, and he's running with his brother apparently from Saturday Night Live. That one, I haven't heard anything of that, so we're not talking. So that one's like on the back burner. I don't know what's going on, but the Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg one, which is happening, which is coming out on in August 2023. Is animated, and these side stories will also be animated films as well.
Okay, all right. So if we're just talking animated, then see, this is tricky, man. This is really tricky. You and I both got really excited when Out of the Shadows came out because it came the closest to giving us what every child in North America in the year 1990 wanted to see. And I feel like I don't mean to be that guy who dumps on animated films because I love them. I'm not. I don't have that bias anywhere in my body. But this, just by the fact that it's animated, it can't be that movie. It can't be that 1990 movie that we all wanted. It just
Agreed.
That doesn't mean it can't be good. I'm sure it will be awesome. I'm sure. I mean, Seth and Evan are two very funny dudes. I'm sure they can come up with some really good stuff to do with these turtles. But okay, what can you tell? What story can you tell in this movie that's different enough from the 2009 movie, the TMNT one, that it stands on its own, but can also sort of bring the turtle world into a place where you want to see all these spinoffs? What's it going to do to make some kid who's never heard of Baxter Stockman excited about the possibility of seeing a Baxter Stockman movie? And Vermont, you're right. If there's no ice and there's no partners in crime, who the hell is scoring this picture? Because what's the point?
I'm with you, Andrew. I want live action. I was a kid in the 80s. I used to watch the cartoon, and when the live action movie came out, it's something different, right? It's adult. It's like, oh, it's real. This is something real that you can have. The problem is, you look at the Michael Bay one, like them or not. I mean, it's pretty much it's Roger Rabbit, right? It's a cartoon in real world. So what's the difference almost? You could do more with animation, but it won't have that feeling, the legitimateness of the live action. And I think about this all the time with like Spider-Man and even Batman, where you have Into the Spider-Verse and Mask of the Phantasm, which you could argue are the strongest movies of any of both of those characters, but they're animated, so they're always left. They're not at the forefront of the conversation or of the mind, right? Like No Way Home is always going to be superior to Into the Spider-Verse because it is live action and it's part of this big thing. There's something special about live action. That being said, if we're going to get it, we're going to get it. I like the TMNT movie. I always liked your idea, like continue the Turtle movie, but keep them like the Burton Batman films and keep them in like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Keep them contained in that timeline.
Yeah, keep New York looking gritty and dangerous.
Exactly, keep it in that, and I think that would be more effective. But we're going to get this cartoon. I would like to see the Rat King as a Paramount Plus show. There's a few though. There's Tiger Claw, but Shredder. The one thing with the Bay movies is they botched Shredder so hard on the first one, and then they kind of retconned him in the second. Well, they retconned him during the first one, and they botched him. Like I think they were going in like an intriguing direction with the Shredder, and then the internet kind of found out about it, and they're like, "Whoa, what? No!" And then they tried to retcon their own movie while they were making it, and they didn't do a good job, I don't think, of that. And then the sequel, they just kind of were like, don't worry about it, it's just Shredder. But the one thing with the Shredder, though, that the 90 movie did so well was his relationship with Splinter and Splinter's master. And you go back, and and I don't know if this works in animation. This is the thing, though, for Paramount Plus, but that story is exciting and intriguing, and it has there's a lot there and a lot of lore that you can expand on. Also going back there, and obviously, he's going to show up.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me is if there's one thing that no Turtles movie, live action or not, has done yet, it's probably my favorite aspect of the 90s cartoon, which is the relationship between Shredder, Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady, and how they are this dysfunctional family who lives together in this giant metal ball, and they all hate each other, and they're all very mean and cruel. And Krang is like, "Pick up that computer, Shredder! Oh, don't tell me what to do." And they just, you can watch them for hours, and you don't even need to look at the Turtles because there's so much entertaining stuff happening here. I feel like somewhere down the line, when it comes to big properties like this, we lost the concept of villains having a sense of humor, and it's sad because I miss that being a thing. So I hope that one of these 14 movies Paramount has in the pipeline, recreates that relationship in a fun way, because that was half the fun of watching that cartoon. Like, yeah, I'm getting the Turtles, but I know I'm going to see Shredder and Krang, and they're going to smack talk each other. And it's going to be great.
Yeah, and it's something that you can, like you said, kids cling to that, but I don't. Villains as a whole have just lost their way, and you, like the MCU is a prime example of it, where there's like what 3 memorable villains in the MCU.
Yeah.
Like there's not many, there's not a lot. They're all, and the first 5, 6, 7 years they've all been the same, right? They're like basically it's the good guy, but he's using the powers for bad. You know, it's like Iron Man is Jeremiah, what's his name? Whatever. He's just got an Iron Man suit. Ant-Man is just he's got an Ant-Man suit. Like they're all, and I love those, like those movies are great, but like the villains are just forgettable. They're there because they have to be there. And I think what I like about this Paramount Plus thing that they're offering us is these villains are going to have personalities, and they're going to have personalities. And Baxter Stockman by Tyler Perry in Out of the Shadows is an all-time great performance. I don't care who you are.
Yes, he is.
I don't care. I don't care who you are at all. Batman, Andrew. We're moving on to Batman once again. We started the show with Batman. We're going to go to Batman. We got Stranger Things coming up a little bit later on, but we got to move to a topic you hate. You are a hater of the character of the Joker. I've never met anyone who hated the Joker as much as you. I think just because you're jealous about the Joker. But there's the Joker. I don't know if the Joker is going to be in the Matt Reeves movie, but it's looking like the Joker is in the Matt Reeves movie. There is an image online. I'm not going to show it here for fear of anybody who doesn't want to see a possible potential spoiler. And again, this might not be a spoiler. I don't know, but there is an image floating around. If you want to see it, DM me on the Twitters. I'll show you. But there's possibly a picture. We know this actor. Andrew, do you know how to say his name? Barry.
I think it's either Keegan or Kagan.
Yeah, I don't think you pronounce the GH. I thought so too. I thought it was Keegan, and now I think it's Cohen, maybe. We're gonna have to call him. Can somebody get him on the phone?
Yeah, get Barry on the line, please.
Get Barry, BK. Let's just call him BK. So BK is in this movie. His name is showing up in the movie. He's not an official cast member. If you watch that Fandango, I think it was Fandango interview where they had the whole cast. I don't know if you've seen that, Andrew, where they have the whole cast lined up and they answer like terrible questions, and they're like, who is your Batman? And they're like, well, you know, I was born in the 50s. My Batman is Adam West, clearly. You know, Colin Farrell's like Adam West, and I'm like, I like Colin Farrell now. He's Joker is showing up in this movie, is what I'm saying. There's a leaked image now going on that could potentially be BK as the Joker. Andrew, if Joker appears in this movie, he's not going to be the main character. Let's just get this out of the way right now. He's not going to be a main character. I know you're not looking forward to Joker, and I think I'm on the same page where there's a billion Batman villains you haven't used. Why do you keep going to the well? At least now they're going to the Riddler. Penguin to me makes sense. Catwoman obviously makes sense. Those are characters that I think they fit into the world. But Joker looks like he's going to appear in this. We talked on Tuesday. You weren't on the show, but we talked a little bit about Matt Hatter potentially being a drug dealer in this, like a low tier villain. Is there room for you if Joker is in this? Because Joker, like it or not, Andrew, Joker exists in Batman lore. And if this movie takes place a year and 6 months into the Batman being the Batman, there's a chance that these characters exist and that the Joker could exist already. Would you be okay if the Joker was in this movie as not as a main threat, but as some sort of either a criminal who's already been behind bars, or just somebody who's out there and is not the main antagonist?
You know what? I'll be okay with that, and I'll tell you why. I'll be okay with it because it's one of the only ways we haven't seen the Joker done before, which is just as a cameo, really. What I don't want is I don't want them to go back to that well of, hey, we have this whole movie where we're fighting Riddler, and then at the end we tease that the sequel is going to be all about the Joker, baby, because we've already done that. It's done. We have done everything that we could possibly do with the Joker that is interesting. So to have him in there as a cameo, that to me is the most interesting way to use him, because it's like acknowledging that in a way. It's saying, okay, we get it. This guy is played out. But you're right. He is part of the Batman mythos. He's an important part of Gotham. The trailer has Batman beating up guys in clown makeup. So it's like he is, if not already prowling the streets, then at least the DNA of what will become him is prowling the streets. So it makes sense to put him in there. But I think that would be kind of cool if he's in there to the same extent that like Wolverine was in at First Class. You know, it's just like, look, we know this character is around, so we'll acknowledge him, but we're done telling that guy's story now. We're trying to do something different. I think I would love that. I would personally be really, really grateful that they had the bravery to do that and say, like, we're moving on. He's here. He's part of the world. We'll sell a toy if you really want, but we're moving on. The next movie is going to be Mr. Freeze or Mad Hatter or whatever. I would really want to see the ventriloquist. I think he's a seriously underrated Batman villain, and I want to see what they can do with him. But I think a cameo would be a perfect thing just because of how fresh it is when it comes to how Joker's been portrayed.
And Matt Reeves said this is like the Rogues Gallery and all of that. And there were rumors years ago that there'd be about 7 villains in this a movie. Joker would just seem to make sense. And Joker, while he is a big bad, Penguin in this movie is not a big bad. Catwoman in this movie is not a big bad. The Riddler is the big bad, right? Penguin's working his way up. Falcone is a big bad. Possibly the Waynes are big bads. The Court of Owls might be the big of all the bads that Riddler's trying to get us to pay attention to and scratch the surface of. So there's something there, and there's something to be said. And if you watch that, again, I'm going to go back to that Fandango interview, Andrew. If you watch that interview, Colin Farrell mentions, you would always see, and he mentions Penguin, Riddler, Catwoman, Joker. Those are the big 4. Those are the ones that were always running around on that show. They had other characters for sure, but those were the big 4. Penguin, Colin Farrell says, only has like 5 or 6 or 7 scenes in this movie. Joker might have less, but he might be impactful, and I think you could have an impactful Joker in a short amount of time. There's also rumor, I don't know, Andrew, saying that perhaps the Joker is an inmate and they use him a little bit as a Hannibal Lecter type. What do you make of that?
That would be cool if it's somebody that Batman put away like a long time ago and he just kind of goes to him for answers. I mean, from what I remember of the comics, I was not around in the 30s, but I think Joker was in Batman #1, like issue 1. He was like the first guy he fought. So if they kind of acknowledge that without necessarily showing that fight, or maybe just showing it as like part of a montage, but he goes to this guy who is one of the first big villains that he stopped and says like, hey, I'm dealing with this Riddler thing. Riddles are kind of like jokes. Maybe you can help me out. I don't know. I'm still, one of the questions that still lingers in my head, and I'm sure I've asked you this before, James, and I'm sure your answer was like, Andrew, who cares? Is when, like, in regards of the production design of this movie, and I don't know if it's a choice by Matt Reeves or by the studio, but when you know Riddler is your big bad, I'm really curious, why go with red and not green?
I've been thinking the same thing, and I've noticed that they've really been. My internet cut out, by the way, just so you know. I've noticed that they're really clinging to that dusk or dawn setting on the rooftop. Also, all the posters are that orangey yellow now. They've kind of moved on from the red, but you see here on the screen, red is their go-to instead of the green. And maybe because Batman Forever was green, red kind of works for this. So it could just be they don't want to be associated with the film that came out before with the Riddler. But I honestly don't know what it is. I'm sure we're gonna find out. I know I like these the McFarlane toys, like these figures is like toys. I don't know what kid would play with these, but I like these figures. But there's one from this movie, Andrew, that is like splattered painted red because of the poster. It's like the poster version of the figure is red. It's bigger too or something. I don't know. It was sold out and I was like, whatever. I just want that one. So I don't know. I don't know what that is. I should also say that I did see on online. This is from Liam Crowley, is tweeting out like the cast for the Batman, and it has unseen Arkham prisoner Barry BK. BK is the unseen unseen Arkham prisoner. Thank you. And I'm reading this too as a prosthetic design. The Penguin and unseen prisoner is the same. The same person did the makeup for both of those. For the Penguin, which is obviously massive amount of makeup, prosthetic design, did a prosthetic design for the unseen prisoner as well. Which I will say, the picture again, if you want to see that picture, let me know. I can send it to you, or you can Google it, whatever. Doesn't show any prosthetics on that picture. Green hair, maybe. A little pale face, yes, but there's no prosthetics that I could see in the picture. So I don't know how that lines up. I also think he would make a great street level Mad Hatter as well. But he could be the Joker. So we have that. And also on Reddit, somebody said that they work at a theater and the cast list showed up for like on their for buying the tickets, and BK's name is on the cast listing for their local theater. I don't know if that's real or not. You know what, though, Andrew? I'm going to look at our local theater, and by ours, I mean mine.
Good call.
And I'm going to go, let's just type in, okay, how do you use this app now? I'm like the old guy, like, how do you, the Batman, here we go.
Somebody tell him how to use apps. Somebody in the chat, walk him through it.
Oh, I hit the trailer. Here we go. Wow, this is so it's Robert Pattinson, Paul Dano, Zoe Kravitz, Colin Farrell, John Turturro, Jeffrey Wright, and Andy Serkis. So that's all that's listed here. So that if what that person had is true, then there it is. But he's listed as an unseen, unknown Arkham prisoner. We did a video on the Joker a little while ago, and people are like, I don't want the Joker. No more Joker. No more Joker. And I know that's how you feel, but I just think that if you're doing a Batman story, the Joker fits in that universe. And I've said it time and time again. The Dark Knight has a bazillion characters in it, and they all work together. And I think when you have Batman and you have these characters, you can throw them in there as little or as small as you want, as long as you give them something, you give them a purpose in your story. And, was it Zaz in Batman Begins or Dark Knight?
It was in Batman Begins.
He's in one of those. Yeah, and there's no point to it, but he's there, and that sets up possible. And they never went back to that well, obviously, but that character exists, and you can do that. And why have no name, nothing characters when you can have characters that will get the fans excited? Why not do that? And that's why I think the Joker can work in this movie.
Exactly. That's something that Marvel has done to make their fans really happy. It's like, hey, this villain needs a henchman. It's like, well, instead of a henchman, let's make it Crossbones because he's a big deal in Captain. So start doing that too. Why not?
That's what I love. I know Star Trek: The Next Generation. I read this article years ago. The writers would write their script, and whenever they needed to do some kind of sci-fi lingo, they would put in brackets sci-fi lingo. And then the sci-fi experts would fill that part out. And I feel like when you watch The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett and Star Wars, there are moments in there where I don't think Favreau's writing it. He knows what that is. He's just writing in brackets this, and then somebody from their story group is saying, "This is your answer," and then they make it like that. I think that's and if you the Duel of the Fates Star Wars script as well by Colin Trevorrow, there are things like Coruscant and things like that, which he didn't know that's what it was. But the story group said, well, this is what you're referring to, so use that. Let's go on to our final topic of the day, Mr. Fantasia. It's this TV show, and it's a lot stranger than you'd think.
Hey-o.
Stranger Things. Season 4 is hitting Netflix in May. Part 1. Part 2 is coming out in July. And accompanying that release date, Andrew, there is a little letter that they wrote. I don't know if you had a chance to read this letter or not. And I
did not, no.
Well, you can read it right now. I'm not going to read it all, but the last paragraph, they kind of go into there are still. So anyway, basically, it ends in season 5. They're going to do 2-part season 4, and then it's going to end in in season 5.
Would you like me to
And in the
quickly
last
read
paragraph,
this for the people watching?
why not? Yeah, sure. I think Mr. Rez and Jennifer and Vermont were like, we came here to hear Andrew read, so why not?
All right, that's what I do. Okay, here we go. Hi, nerds. Do you copy? It's been a little while. With 9 scripts, over 800 pages, almost 2 years of filming, thousands of visual effects shots, and a runtime nearly twice the length of any previous season, Stranger Things 4 was the most challenging season yet, but also the most rewarding one. Everyone involved is incredibly proud of the results, and we can't wait to share it with you. Given the unprecedented length and to get it to you as soon as possible, Season 4 will be released in 2 volumes. Volume 1 will release on May 27th. Volume 2 will release 5 weeks later on July 1st. So that's the good news. It's coming soon, and it's bigger than ever. It's also the beginning of the end. 7 years ago, we planned out the complete story arc for Stranger Things. At the time, we predicted the story would last 4 to 5 seasons. It proved too large to tell in 4, but as you'll soon see for yourselves, we are now hurtling toward our finale. Season 4 will be the penultimate season. Season 5 will be the last. There are still many more exciting stories to tell within the world of Stranger Things, new mysteries, new adventures, new unexpected heroes, but first, we hope that you stay with us as we finish this tale of a powerful girl named Eleven and her brave friends, of a broken police chief and a ferocious mom, of a small town called Hawkins, and an alternate dimension known only as the Upside Down. As always, we are grateful for your patience and support. Over and out, Matt and Ross. Wow.
Over and out.
I love when showrunners kind of spell this out and tell you sort of where the GPS is pointing. And man, these posters, have you seen the 4 of them together? The way they're...
Yes.
Yeah,
I almost used that one, but...
yeah, gorgeous.
I can't
gorgeous.
Wait. I love this show. This is one of the few Netflix shows that I always look forward to. I remember the first time I saw the trailer. I'm glad it's coming to an end, though, for a few reasons. One, everything runs its course, and 2, the kids are no longer kids. I think Millie Bobby Brown just turned like 18, or she's about to that's an adult now. So now the kids aren't going to be riding their little tricycles around town anymore, and then suddenly that stops being cute, and you're like, well, you're an adult now. I don't. Your adventure's not that much fun. So I don't know how it's going to go, but I love that they mapped this out years ago, that they always had this plan. So there's a few points to this, Andrew, but the first point we're going to get into is they're breaking up season 4 into 2 halves. Are you a fan of this? They did this. We saw this. Netflix has done this a few times. HBO, I believe, was the first one to really do this. Are you a fan of splitting these series up into halves?
Yeah, they did that with like Arrested Development as well and a couple other things. I'm neither a fan nor do I hate it. I think it's fine. I feel like thanks to stuff like The Mandalorian now, I'm just really... my heart lives in the world of just release it weekly so that I have something to look forward to every week. Because I go back to the mistake that I made last year when Cobra Kai season 3 came out, and I watched it all in 12 hours, and I should not have done that. It was not a smart thing to do, and I feel like I'm going to be so excited for this that when it comes out, I'm going to be tempted to do the same. But now he's talking about, or rather, not he, they, because there's Duffer brothers, not Duffer singular here, but they're talking about how there's 9 scripts, but that it's also longer. Okay, so there'll be, I'm confused by that. 9 scripts for the whole season, but they're splitting it up. So I think what they're trying to tell us is that the episodes themselves are longer.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, so if we have like episodes that are, I don't know, 80, 85 minutes each, then you're looking at a substantially increased runtime like they're promising. So yeah, then that makes sense to stagger it a bit so it's not overwhelming. And I bet you any money they just have a really cool midpoint thing going on in the story, and they want to give people time to savor that. So why not?
And it totally works with subscription-based programming where they're like, oh, you're going to want to stick around till July to do this. And it's not like, it's 2 months. That's pretty good. I didn't like He-Man going 6 months, whatever it was. Like,
yeah,
to me, that was
weird.
It was ridiculous. And then that show, I don't know, that show didn't stick for me. So, whatever. But it was too long of a gap also. It was... By the time part 2 came, I was over it anyway. So I think not that I would be over Stranger Things because I've been so invested for 400 years now since the first one came out. But I think I don't know. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm okay with the split. It's always weird to me when they split these things. But it's on Netflix and they drop them all at once, and it is one big giant movie essentially. It's going to probably take me the entire 2 months to watch all 4 or 5 episodes from part 1 also. Oh, and your buddy in crime here has just joined the chat. We should have had him on for our She-Hulk talk.
Mr. Ryan J. Whitehead, yes, he's right. Yeah, it looks like there might be 2 arcs, and they need the extra time to cover it. Because you're right, Ryan, because you have Hawkins and you have Russia. It looks like there's a lot of stuff going on in Russia.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they've expanded over to Russia. There's a lot going on. He is right about that. But they're also wrapping it up, right? So it's going to be like arc, but also you've got to figure that they're planting the seeds to get us to the ending. And Disney He has joined us in the chat as well. Hello, Bright Suns. That's a good day in Hondo, apparently. So what that is. Also, Andrew, though, the other thing that they're mentioning out here is there are still more exciting stories to tell within the world of Stranger Things. I mentioned to you a few years ago that I walked into a Chapters, Indigo, whatever it was, and there were Stranger Things novelizations, and you were very excited. You went, oh, that means the world is growing and expanding and there's more to tell. Are you excited for the possibilities of this version of Stranger Things ending, but spin-offs coming up?
Based on what we have in the 3 seasons so far, I might say no. But if 4 and 5 give us other things to explore that I would be interested in exploring, then yeah, I could, because right now, as it stands, all we have is one town with one portal to one place, and all the monsters in that place all look the same. So the world building to me doesn't have a whole lot of variety to it. But if this opens up, if these seasons open up this world in a really big way, then I could get behind the idea of this being, a thing. Like if, let's say season 5 ends with the world kind of going, not like post-apocalyptic, but the world kind of goes a Jurassic World 3 route where it's like, hey, we have demigorgons everywhere now. We just have to live with that and, shield ourselves from these things. And we do some kind of spin-off where we jump ahead in the future and we follow this new group of people who are just dealing with living in this world. And hey, along comes these adult characters who are the original kids from Hawkins, and they know the score. They've been around the block, and it's like this version of Ghostbusters Afterlife just with them. That kind of thing, maybe I could get behind. But right now, it's a very contained thing to me. The story is super contained to Hawkins, to the Upside Down, and I haven't seen enough variety to make me want to say, I'm going to read books and spin-off comics till I can't see straight, because it's not that kind of story yet.
I'm with you, but my big thing is, because you just said in the future, and it's just the story works so well because of the 80s.
Yes.
Right? Like what we just said about Ninja Turtles, how you like, if the Ninja Turtles could keep New York in that era, this show is so dependent on 1985 or whatever it is, right? It's dependent on that era. It's dependent on kids on bikes going outside, no cell phones, no this or that. My feeling is that there is a lot they can do, because while this is an isolated story and we only know what's going on right now, they're expanding to Russia, clearly, from what we've seen. So there could be other instances happening elsewhere. And also 11 is number 11. They did try to do that one episode, the Mandalorian episode in season 2, where she goes off and visits her friends, or her sister. Remember, was she number 12 or 8 or something like that? And yeah. I didn't mind that episode so much, but people could not stand that episode, and I think that was their first attempt at spin-offs was with that one. And I think there is a lot they can do in the spin-off. I'm with you. I don't think we've been introduced to enough of it, or we haven't been introduced to anything that would make me feel very excited about it right now, other than the fact that I like Stranger Things and I like this world. And if it ends, I would be willing to continue on. I do think, though, if you're going to spin it off, you do it now. You do it sooner than later. You do it before season 5. You do it before the show ends. You give it to me now. You don't let it end, right? You do the Book of Boba Fett in the middle of the Mandalorian. You don't do it at the end. You do it now. Give it to me now. Give me a reason. Tease me with it. Be like, okay, you're going to get season 5, but first we're going to give you this show. And that's what would get me on board more with it. Because again, if they do a spinoff, Andrew, and it doesn't look as great as Stranger Things, or, it doesn't follow kids, it's not the Goonies with demons, maybe I'm not as invested in it. And if you give it to me after, I might stay away. But if you give it to me in the middle, I might gravitate to it just to cling on a little bit longer.
Maybe. Yeah, you're right. The 80s does make a huge world of difference. Yeah, you're right, Ryan. Maybe give it a break, let time kind of heal all the wounds, and then let people get hungry for it again. But I feel like I remember
the problem is streaming. I was just saying streaming. The problem with streaming is it doesn't want you to take time. It wants you to keep paying for it. So they're going to be like, here's Stranger Things 7 and 8 and 9, and here's Stranger Things. That's how they work, right? They want to get you on. That's the problem. Is story. Sorry, Andrew. Story comes second, right? Story comes second. Your $16 a month comes first.
Unfortunately, one day we'll live in the world where it's the opposite. But you're right. Like
please
wonder, before the first season ever came out, I distinctly remember being somewhere online, maybe it was on Netflix itself, I don't know, and seeing the poster saying this new show called Stranger Things is coming soon to Netflix. It's coming in like 5 months, whatever. And the poster was a classic hand-drawn Drew Struzan looking poster.
Yeah.
And I got so excited. I was like, I have no idea what this show is, but I'm already like waiting in front of my TV for it to start. And I remember telling people like, oh my God, there's this like really crazy looking 80s adventure show coming out. And everybody's like, whatever. And then the show comes out and the whole world's talking about it. So You're right. If they lose that retro appeal, what is the show then but just a sci-fi about some scary but bland monsters in a portal? So that's why I'm really hesitant to say that I'd get excited for any kind of spin-offs or world building, because just the world as it is, I like it in this story. I don't know if I necessarily like it in others.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you on that. As much as I like this, I don't know if I'd like it beyond this. I don't know. My first time being exposed to Stranger Things was the first trailer for it. I was playing soccer, and it was like a hour before I had to leave, and I put on IMDb, and this trailer for this thing called Stranger Things came up, and I was like, oh, what's this? And then I put it on and I watched it, and I was like, oh, okay. And it came out a few months later, and I like it, and I watched it all. I think I watched the first season twice, which is, for me, that's impressive. But anyway, Andrew, we're going to wrap it up. Anything else you want to say? Are you sad that the Tarantino Star Trek is dead?
No, because I feel like it was dead the moment it got announced. And I think that's par for the course with lots of Tarantino stuff. He just kind of says things, he'll wake up tomorrow and do a press conference and be like, hey, I think I'm going to make a Wonder Woman movie, guys. I don't know. And then in like 4 months, he'll be like, I'm not making a Wonder Woman movie. That's crazy time. So
I actually, the Tarantino Star Trek thing was funny because I think like a month or a few weeks before it was announced, I listened to a podcast, which was like a year or two old at this point. And he talked about Star Wars and Star Trek. And they asked him, and he goes, oh, I'm more into Star Trek. But he's like, I like the original series of Star Trek. And he went on to it. And then he talked about the J.J. Abrams ones. And he goes, he did this before the third movie came out. So he talked about the first one and he loved the first one. Then he talked about the second one. Have you heard this podcast? I'll send you the link if you haven't. But he talks about what they did wrong in the second Star Trek movie. And it makes so much sense. And he talked about what he loved about it. And then people are like, he's going to do it. And I was like, what? No, I listened to that podcast. It's old and he's not making it. And then he actually said he was doing it. And Variety today, Andrew, just put out an article with I don't remember the actor's name, but it was a writer's name that he was writing it with. And they got together for meetings and stuff. And apparently His script was a take on the 18th episode, I believe, of the original Star Trek show. And it's going to be like 1920 or 30s gangster Earth, but it might have been like another planet. And they used to just get together and watch gangster movies and just talk about Star Trek. And then it just kind of died.
That's funny. And you know what? I only know the name of one episode from the originals, and it's that one. So that's really funny. That's the one he picked. Disney Does is saying that she thinks Stranger Things suffers from binge watching, unlike Disney Plus. I think about those shows day in and day out for weeks. With Netflix, I watch in one sitting and forget about it. Exactly, Disney. Exactly. That's what happened to me with Cobra Kai season 3, and I love that show. But it was totally my fault. I binged when I shouldn't have. And my kids were like, I learned binging from watching you, Dad. And now they're horrible monsters and I've disowned them. So I'd rather go the Disney Plus route myself.
So I hate binging, as you know. I've brought this up many a time. I cannot stand binging. 2-episode max kind of guy. But I've read articles that model for Netflix is not doing them any favors right now. It's hurting them, apparently. And that could be why they're splitting up Stranger Things into 2 sections. They're not going to drop their model of all at once. They want you to. But the thing I can't stand, Andrew, is on May when they drop the first half of season 4, you're going to watch it. Brock's going to watch it. And I'm going to be waiting around. And it's going to take me 2 months to finish all 4 or 5 episodes. And you guys are going to be done. And the problem is we can't talk about it. Whereas Disney Plus drops it. And Apple does this, and Prime, I think, does this. They drop it weekly. All of a sudden, I might not watch it the same time as you, but I'm watching it that day, most likely. And then we could talk about it. And we have a week to talk about this thing. And and Stranger Things, the last season dropped. I wasn't around. I think I was on vacation or something when it dropped. Brock watched it all. I was gone. He's like, "Did you see it?" I'm like, "No, we can't talk about it." By the time I finally caught up and talked about it, he was like, "I don't even remember." He was like, yeah, things happened. I don't know. So I think Disney has a point there. Whether or not Netflix cares, I doubt it, because they're still getting our $17 a month.
They're still swimming in all our money, right? You're right. They don't have the most important thing with shows like this is they don't have the water cooler appeal.
Yeah.
Something like Lost had the water cooler appeal. People talked about it all week and asked questions and spat theories at one another. And you can't do that with this because it's like, hey, Gail, what do you think is going to happen at the end in the finale of Stranger Things? And Gail's like, well, don't ask me because I've only watched 2 episodes. So you can't get that same conversation going with something like this. It's expecting everybody to be on the same page. And even though bajillions of people have Netflix, they're rarely ever synchronized in their binging.
No, absolutely. And I'm the worst at it. There are shows that I love, and it takes me forever I love The Witcher a lot. I like that show a lot. And it took me, I think, 2 weeks to watch it the last season because I'm just like, I watched an episode today, maybe tomorrow, maybe I'll wait 2 days. Yeah, that's just how I am. I'm not, if it's a movie, it's different. But if you put it episodic, once you give me a break, you give me an out, I'm out. And I walk away and I'm like, I want to go outside and get some fresh air. But anyway, we got to wrap it up. We've gone overtime today. Andrew, thank you so much. Why don't you, go whore out Side Scroller and your YouTube channel.
Oh, I don't have it near me, so I can't hold it up. But Side Scroller is my book, and I wrote it. Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and type in Andrew Fantasia Side Scroller, and then you can get it on paperback or ebook. And it's really, really orange because that was the color scheme I chose. Unlike Batman, who chose red, even though they probably should have gone with green.
Actually, your book cover looks like the Batman posters, so you should probably market them side by side. Tonight, for all of you Rebel Scum fans, tonight there is a round table with Andrew, Brock, myself, and Ross from Fantha Tracks talking about Star Wars books and the novelizations. Andrew has a bone to pick with them, and he picks it good. And I buy a book live on the show, so you're gonna watch that tonight. 8 o'clock, you're going to watch it. You will watch that tonight. That's on at 8 o'clock tonight on Rebel Scum Podcast channel. If you're watching the repeat of this, just go over to the Rebel Scum Podcast channel, and you can check that out. But until then, thank everybody for watching. Thank you so much. Don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. If you haven't liked us and subscribed us, it's been 1 hour and 9 minutes. Why haven't you done it? Okay, bye.
Do we have a sign-off phrase for this show? I know it's been 3 years, but...
It is. Do you want me to do it now? Are you ready for it?
I don't know. I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
You heard me say it last time, but he's Andrew. I'm James. and may you be the master of your own universe. This music, oh yeah. Grab yourself a margarita, sit by the pool or the jazz piano or wherever you want. It's Friday. Get in your comfy clothes.
I don't have any comfy clothes. We established that at the top of the show.
Bye, everyone.